Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pod Mavericks Group Therapy. I am Kirk Henderson, editor-in-chief over at MavsMoneyball.com. I had kind of a weird day today. My son's elementary school had field day, and my wife signed me up to be a volunteer. So I opted to go to that, and then I just decided to take the day off, whereas normally I would be hosting one of these a little later in the afternoon, kind of closer to close of business for folks. Decided to do this early. So, it's been kind of an interesting 3 days. We had Tuesday night where we did like 2.5 hours of live content. And now we've kind of had some time to process and reflect and, really write some things and kind of think through our takes. I just wanted to get together. It's going to be a long month until the NBA draft. The last 3 days have been one of those things where I'm trying to get better about not engaging with the online discourse between Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, even YouTube comments to an extent, because the bottom line is like, we don't really have any say. I mean, we don't have any say. It's not like we have really, it's like the Mavericks don't give a shit what we think. But still, when it comes to team building, it's one of these things that a lot of us have opinions on. And I found myself more than a little frustrated at the growing consensus from, I don't know how to phrase this, because I am friendly with so many. I want to be friendly with like every other kind of, competitor, or whatever you want to call it. Because I mean, I've worked with like the Locked On Mavs guys. I've spoken with Coop, of Mavs Radio. Is Talk wrote for our site, for example. There's just always, I want to be like careful in how I say this, because I'm want to emphasize that, of course, we don't get a say, but I just find myself so frustrated by the notion, like, and it really felt like it came together in like a 3-day period from, I'll just name them, it was Is Talk, it was Nick, it was Isaac, it was Followell, it was Brian Damaris, etc. That everybody said, well, we really got to trade the pick. That's kind of the emphasis. And I find myself frustrated at that, not because I necessarily think it's the wrong choice. I think it's the linear, we have to choose this path and go down and just, this is what the Mavericks have to do. They have to trade the pick. And to be quite candid, with the way the Mavericks have built the team the last several years, they've built the team poorly the last several years. Luka is the reason the team was good. Luka Doncic is why the Dallas Mavericks are good. Everybody else is a peripheral point. They've had some things that worked in their favor. The Dorian, Finney-Smith, and Reggie Bullock combination was really quite something. But they had a 7.5-man rotation when they went to the Western Conference Finals, and they didn't understand why they won. Everybody got older, and the only thing they did was bring in JaVale McGee. So for the championed all of these moves that I very much disagree with, when I see another thing, everybody coming together on and saying, this is what the Mavericks should do, I find myself kind of losing my mind. Now, that said, we have no idea what the Mavericks are going to do. So when it feels like a consensus talking point, that honestly, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. But I don't know why stuff like that just frustrates me. Josh Bowe wrote a really, really good piece on Mavs Moneyball. It's kind of summarizing both sides of the argument, and him coming to the conclusion where he essentially says, why don't the Mavericks, like, instead of everybody choosing a particular side in the argument, how about we just hope that they make the best deal possible and do something to actually improve the team? I think where I find myself particularly challenged at the moment too is a phrase has been going through my head a lot lately. It's later than you think. And what I mean by that is that the Mavericks are in a much worse spot than I think we're willing to admit. If you were to just go look at like the Dallas Mavericks salary for next year before signing Kyrie and look at the players who are available, it was on like Spot Track. Let's go do this right now. Mavericks Spot Track. Just to see who, is on the salary cap for next year. Let's just go through and look at it. Luka Doncic, Tim Hardaway, Davis Bertans, Maxi Kleber, Reggie Bullock, JaVale McGee, Josh Green, Jaden Hardy. Like, what? Who are we kidding? They're terrible. You bring back Kyrie, they're two superstars and terrible. So I just feel crazy when it's just like Luka will elevate. So you win 4 more games. What we're actually doing is talking ourselves into this team being better than they really are. Oh, guys, they're 42 and 40. They're fantastic. They just, they could have won 3 more games. They could have been 45 and 37. It would have been great. Blah, blah, blah. Like, there's just so many little instances where you can talk yourself into this as a concept where the Mavericks would have been better. And I think that's actually not a terrible argument. Like, Luka's one of the best players alive, so he can really drag your ceiling all the way up. But you just need more. And you don't need, to me, I don't want a retread. Now, the one part about the pick debate that I found very, pick versus trade, if we're going to talk trades, one thing I would also like to see in that is who are the distressed assets that people are thinking that's available. I honestly don't know. I had some great stuff pitched to me today when I tweeted that out. Some things and guys that I hadn't really considered. And so if you're telling me that the Mavericks could somehow trade like the 10th pick and shed some salary and get back a particular, like a wing, or if you like DeAndre Ayton, that's good. I'm not going to argue with you. I honestly don't know how to feel about him, but that's just sort of where I am at the moment, where it cannot be we're trading the pick as a concept. It needs to be pick plus player and then name names. Who do you think they can get? Because otherwise you're really talking. It's honestly, with the way this new collective bargaining agreement works, and we're going to be learning about this as the days and weeks go by, and years go by, the league wants, like, the best teams are built through the draft. You'd figure that the Mavericks kind of would understand this by now. And that, instead of talking about how the draft is a crapshoot, you would say, hey, look, starting in 2018, when we cared about this, we got Luka Doncic, we got Jalen Brunson. In 2020, did we miss out, sort of, because Josh Green wasn't the greatest pick? Yes. But Josh Green in a redraft would probably be a top 15 guy, I think. Last year, and when they traded out of their pick for Christian Wood, they still ended up getting Jaden Hardy at 37. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you say a path to building a team cannot work, then that is it's not going to work. If you say that, like, that's what's going to happen. I know it's fucking rich coming from me that I'm talking about negative thinking produces negative results, because I am just kind of a negative person. But, like, what the fuck? Like, let's just leave it open as a path and maybe hope. Okay, I've been soliloquizing for 7 or 8 straight minutes. Remember, if you want to come up on stage and talk, there's the link that's pinned in the YouTube chat where you come into a waiting room. Ollie James has been waiting for a few minutes. My buddy Leo has been waiting for a few minutes. I want to come up here. I want to talk about all this stuff. Want to talk about anything you guys really want to. Like, there's, the wings season has started. You guys want to talk wings? I don't really care. Ollie, welcome. Thanks for waiting and listening to my just sort of a mild rant.
No worries, Kurt. Thank you for hosting this at a nice time, just cooking dinner.
That's right. Not early in the morning, not it's we're doing it at a reasonable time.
Yeah. What time is it for you guys?
It's 12:45 here in Texas.
Oh, that's nice lunchtime then.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm 100% on the same idea as you. We need to keep this pick. My only issue, and you've said it before, the best players the Mavs have moving forward is going to be guards. And when I look at this draft, the best player available at 10 is likely going to be a guard. I'm looking at a Casey Wallace or a Jordan Hawkins. I don't want Grady Dick.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. Talented player, but we can't have another white guy being drafted by the Mavericks.
Well, he's also. I think it's
that's
like the path to playing for the Mavericks as a rookie means being able to play defense.
Yeah,
and he has some liabilities there.
Yeah, we need a guy with athleticism and play defense. I like Casey Wallace. I think Casey Wallace and Jaden Hardy off the bench as your backcourt could work. He's a bit more he's more of a defender, but then you let Jaden Hardy go and be the offensive guy, and you trade Tim Hardaway. I don't think Tim Hardaway is a massively negative asset.
Not anymore
at all.
They got him back up.
I mean, you're not going to get like a lottery pick for him, but you could get someone like Daniel Gafford from the Washington Wizards. You know, that's a trade that would work for both parties. I think, especially if Wizards at 7 take, because I think the draft is fairly locked in. I think we've got the top 3, and then you've got Thompson at 4, and then I think you've got 5, 6, and 7 being Walker, Hendricks, and Cam Whitmore. And I think that they'll probably get Hendricks at 7, and if you get 7 with him at 7, you pair him with Porzingis, and then you don't need Gafford anymore. So you're likely they could say, right, we'll trade him, trade him away, and it's a win-win for both. Mavs get their big man center. He's not the best center, but he's better than Dwight Powell. So
I mean, he kicked our butt, and he'd fit that mold. Dallas has a history of going and getting guys who have just absolutely beat the pants off of us. I will say, when looking at kind of mock drafts, and I threw together kind of a piece on Mavs Moneyball yesterday that was looking at kind of the big sites mock drafts. What I kind of think needs to happen if the Mavericks are to use the pick at 10 is essentially there needs to be a late riser. There needs to be someone in this process that goes from 12 to 14 to 7 to 8. And then that bumps one of these guys back.
Yeah.
I Kevin O'Connor, who I talk with pretty regularly, he has Jarris Walker going at 10. I mean,
I don't see it.
I don't see it either. He's a man, but
6'7", defends. Yeah, he might not be able to shoot just yet, but we're not talking about NBA spacing.
Would you be ecstatic if he were there at 10? I think I would be.
Yeah, I think that solves a lot of your problems. It really does. And if he's at 10, that's wonderful. I just don't see it. And This is what, I think the Locked On boys, I listen to them and I despair because I'm like, it's not going to happen. Some of the trades that they suggest,
and that's where I lose my mind when I'm listening to them as well, because I'm just like, I understand that Luka's really good, but does this measurably move the needle? Where I was reading some of Iztok's tweets today, and he's talking about how the Mavericks need to be a contender. And I'm like, you don't get to be a contender by bringing on mediocrity.
Yeah. The one, I can't remember who it was, they suggested the 10th pick and Tim Hardaway for the 11th and Jonathan Isaac. I'm like, what in the world are we doing there?
Right. That's
played 8 games.
And that's where, I hate to be mean. I try not to be mean anymore. I have too many followers and people, but it's just like, You gotta. One thing I've learned after covering basketball for 10 years is that no one actually watches anyone else other than their own team, unless they're like a single, early 20s guy that doesn't have a significant other yet. There's too many games. You can't to not know that Jonathan Isaac has essentially been toast for 2 years means it's just you're telling on yourself, and it's And also, let's just no, thank you. Like him as a person, we already got Kyrie. We're good. We don't need any more. Thank you.
I mean, I'd take him if it's Bertans and a second.
Right. Sure.
But, the idea of him works. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not giving up Tim Hardaway, one of your only salvageable.
I will say though, players. These trades that are getting thrown out are sort of helping make my point.
Yeah.
Where it's you throw these things out and you're like, is this measurably moving the needle? Where it's well, we got to really be concerned about Luka. And I've kind of moved past that stage of grief, worrying about Luka demanding a trade. Because I'm like, if Luka's demanding a trade because we didn't go pick up somebody using the 10th pick, I'm like then that was going to happen anyways.
I mean, Kirk, I said it a couple of months back, and I said it was dark when I said I think Luka's already gone. And he said that he was going to be. I said he'll ask for a trade. I still think that. I think you now need to build past that and think more longer term by keeping this one pick that you're going to have to get yourself another cornerstone to pair with Hardy. And if you do take a case on Wallace, I would then say, okay, you could look at trading Josh Green. I like Josh Green. I wouldn't normally say trade Josh Green, but I do agree you can't have your 4 best players all being guards and bringing another young player to be another guard, because there's just not enough minutes. I mean, Josh can play small ball 3, and you could have Green, Luca, Kyrie, a big man and a guy who's 6'7", 6'8", but I don't know.
It can feel a little dark, but maybe everything will end up working out. Who knows? We'll see what's going on here shortly. I just got a request in the chat to do something that I need to take care of here real quick. But Ollie, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. Appreciate it.
Take care. Talk soon. Okay, coming up next is my guy Leo. Leo, what's up?
Hi. Amidst all the negativity, I kind of wanted to take your point or see what you would consider a reasonable jump for both of our young players, Josh Green and Jaden Hardy. Because a nice jump defensively from Green could cover up a lot of the issues we see in our defense personally. Because at that point, it makes trading players like Reggie Bullock, and if Hardy can make a reasonable jump, that could cover some of what THJ does. And we can open up and have more minutes and maybe hopefully bring up some guys that are undrafted or that other teams have given up, kind of like what they try to do with Cam Reddish. So, I mean, what would you consider like an okay jump or like an attainable jump for both of them so that we can have an improvement? So that way, if we take a draft pick, it wouldn't be like the most horrible thing because it's elevation through talent.
Okay, so in 2023, Josh Green played 60 games, 9 points, 3 rebounds, just under 2 assists, shot 54% from the field, 40% from 3, which is fantastic. For Green, and then how many minutes here? He played 20, almost 26 minutes a game. I'd like to see Green inch closer to 30 minutes. It might not. It depends on who's in the roster, of course, because if he's playing, one of the wing spots, even though he's a big guard, that might be the case. His scoring really came in fits and starts. Like you go look at his game log and you see these games where he's just out of his mind, and then he goes
like that Utah game with Hardy.
Right. And then he goes 2 weeks without doing anything. I don't want to put a point per game goal on him. I want to see a consistency level from him. And I think the Mavericks would probably want the same thing. He came a long way this year. And I think he went from, prior to the year, I was questioning whether I thought he should be in the league. I mean, I'm on record about that. And he just did a really good job, I think, kind of shutting me and a lot of people up. I think Kid kind of sapped his confidence a time or two, which is pretty maddening, but what are you going to do there? Jaden Hardy's an interesting one because, I thought the way, Dalton Trigg and I argue about this a lot. A lot of people wanted Hardy to play earlier, but I think the Mavericks plan for him was executed as flawlessly as you can in a really shit season. He played nearly 50 games, 48 games, 8.8 points, just under 2 rebounds, just under assist and a half. He shot 44% from the floor and also 40% from 3, also 82% in the line. That's fantastic. For him, I am going to say the scoring. 75% of the guys in the league score under 10 points a game. So getting over that 10 points a game mark, becoming a double-digit average scorer, and playing, let's see here. Granted, he only played 15 minutes a game. So if he's able to play 24 minutes a game, just under half the game, and I actually think he'll play more, that would be a real successful thing for me. I thought his defense was nowhere near as horrible as I was worried about. I mean, he was a rookie, and he's also kind of weak and small, so he's going to get picked on.
But that wingspan was impressive. The block he got on Klay Thompson during that Warriors game.
He's got a great frame, and this is, these next 2 to 3 years are when he'll put on a great deal of muscle. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think the hope level for Hardy, I'm very pleased to have expectations for him. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's not related to the nonsense from today. So I mean,
if we need like a pie in the sky take, we still have AJ Lawson. And earlier in the year, I remember you guys had
he was a stick figure at Summer League, and then those last 2 games of the regular season, he looked yoked. It's like, what the hell happened? Did he take creatine all year?
Well, and I remember at the beginning of the year, you guys had like a sort of corresponding thing going on with the Mavs G League affiliate, and the coach there was talking about like, well, yeah, we in the previous regime we really didn't have any direction. There wasn't that much communication between the Mavs and the Texas Legends, and he was talking about like, oh, well, we appreciate how Jason Kidd and the coaching staff is really like giving us instructions and telling us how we want to bring these players along. So, if there's anything to show off that in the improvements that both Jaden Hardy and Josh Green showed after their stints in the G League, however small or large they were, it wouldn't be like the most horrible thing to maybe just hope AJ Lawson turns into a nice bench wing or a competent
right. If
like
he's your
starter.
So Zachary in the chat says use the 15th spot on the AJ Lawson instead of Theo Penson. And it's like, yeah, that's right. Like you want to have guys you can play. I don't know. This and he's kind of a big guard too, which is a little bit problematic. But you know, I was very pleased with his development.
I will say it's funny. We decided to play all guards the moment we fire Coach Carlisle.
Oh my God, yeah, I know. Which he was how many Rick and his 3-guard lineups. Well, thank you, Leo. You got anything else?
I'm good, thank you. Hope everyone has a good day and stay off Twitter.
Have a good one, Leo. Okay, coming up next is my man Jose, who has been waiting patiently. Jose is one of the folks who run 77 Spaces on Twitter. Jose, what's up?
Man, after a couple of days of just the onslaught on Twitter of how to build a team, it like the Twitter page B-Ball Index has the graph of showing like teams where they're currently at, their win percentage, and then they're also their age discrepancy. And like it's the Milwaukee Bucks at the very like top right, and you see where they're at. They're just like over the 30-year-old mark,
Sure.
and then like they just flamed out in the first round against the Miami Heat, and then like you see the teams that are kind of like right now in the conference finals, like with the Miami Heat, with the Boston Celtics, and even the Lakers are still in that range of 26, 28 years old. And it's just like, well, at some point the Mavericks are going to have to get younger. And
Jason Kidd can use his favorite line from 2 seasons ago. We're a young team. Like that's how we sell Kidd on this.
Well, that's been a Mavs staple, even under Donnie Nelson and Rick Carlisle. They were just like, well, we're a young team. And I'm just like, how? How are we a young team? But other than that, it's just like, I just want to keep the pick. Sure, we could shop it around, but at the end of the day, like I had listed a couple of players that I would trade out of the 10 pick, but I also didn't put like, you know, this would also indicate, you know, I'm getting more draft capital in return for said player, unless it's like an OG or a Pascal, then I would have to consider more of a straight up trade. But other than that, it's like if you put Luka around talent, he's going to make them a lot better. We've been skating by with second rounders and undrafted free agents or undrafted free agents, and we just been banking on their development. So what is so hard on banking off the first round talent, you know, the 10th pick overall? You know, I think there's going to be somebody good. And then also, especially if their skill set is more geared to defense, I think the Mavericks offense is going to be good regardless of who's on the team. But I think especially in the starting lineup, you could have these 3-and-D wings and stuff like that. And your center doesn't have to be a DeAndre Ayton. He doesn't have to be a tweener. He doesn't have to be somebody that could average, you know, maybe 14 and 12. He could just average 8 and 12, and we'll be good offensively. We've seen a lot of the positive numbers with Dwight Powell on the starting lineup, and it's just like, well, why are we still trying to get a asset like DeAndre Ayton? Even though Miles Turner is a good weak side defender and he could get a lot of blocks at the rim, I would just rather have a low cost player. I mean, that's another thing that we're gonna have to take into account as the CBA gets releases. Like, we're gonna have to
Which
assess
I
what
fucking
we
hate. Like, who wants to like? It makes me think of the Kevin Durant tweet at Matt Moore. Like, who wants to be having a hoop combo and looking at a graph? But it's like, who wants to be having a hoop combo while looking at a goddamn accounting line?
and and we just need the young talent. We like AJ Lawson. I am stoked. I like AJ Lawson. I was angry that they didn't bring him in, after the summer league. But
Sure.
as long as you could keep a AJ Lawson, McKinley Wright is fine, but his height does play a issue. But I would just like to see younger players. I mean, we have Tim, we have Bertans, we have Dwight Powell. Like, these guys are just done in terms of like growing and the sport, and you already know like what they're gonna provide. It's just like, all right, well, cool. Can we get a new starting three? I think Josh Green, even being in the starting rotation, currently, is a little bit risky because you mentioned he is kind of like an oversized guard, but at the same time he's not as a big of a wing either. And he's a good, nice little defender, but he also needs to stop fouling so much. And we ran into a lot of problems with his consistency also because of his fouling. So if he's able to get better disciplined on the defensive end and also more consistency on the offensive end, I think you could skate by with Josh Green, but you severely need to get a better 4 and a better 5. At least your 4 needs to be a 6'7" wing or a 6'9" wing. I would say 6'9" is perfect. And then for your center position, I think you could get by with 6'8" to 7 foot at least.
Gonna be able to rebound and have somebody who can protect the rim. Height, yeah.
Right. So, Kirk, I guess my question is like, what do you ultimately want? Because
I want him to draft the pick. I want him to draft somebody because I'm almost thinking about this in a post-Luka era at some point where you have to build for the future, even though I don't think Luka's going to leave. I don't think I've also settled on the fact that I don't think he's going to demand a trade. That's a different topic for a different day. I will say that one of the things as I've been frustrated with anyone who would like to trade the pick is I've been making the same mistake that that I accuse the Mavericks of making all the time, which is linear moves, one move to fix one problem. Whereas when I very clearly, just to use a counter example, Los Angeles Lakers in the trade market this year knew what their problems were and did 2 or 3 things to fix them. It was like they got Rui Hachimura for almost nothing, and then they moved assets to bring back lesser players who fit the roles needed, and then they went on a run. And if the Mavericks were to trade the pick, one of the things that the hopium I would be taking at that point would be, what's the next move then? What do they have in mind? Because it's not like they have so many problems. One thing's not going to fix it. That's honestly why I want them to just use the pick on a player, because that is the starting point for what they need to do elsewhere. But I guess it's the same way with the trade. I don't know. I honestly think what'll happen is somebody like Brandon Miller. No, there's a guy who's on like one of the G League teams that's been rising, and I think there's going to be somebody that like is a late riser, and then one of these 3, like I take any of these 3 to 5 guys that are I still have Kevin O'Connor's mock draft pulled up, but like if like Taylor Hendricks falls for some reason, yeah, give me that guy. Like there's just enough guys in this where I'm just like I would like to take that guy. Anthony Black is he's a big guard, but I think he's bigger than Josh Green. He can guard wings. I don't know. I'm open-minded to stuff. Where I settle, where I should settle, is on Josh Bowe's article today, which is just do something because it's the best move. Don't do it because you're trying to achieve a specific end of veteran help. Like, just that's all. That's right. I'll probably flip-flop 1,000 times like the rest of us will, but
Yeah, we got a long time till the draft, but like going back on 2 of your points, like I'm not worried as much about the Luka timeline. He's 24 years old. We got 3 more years of his current contract. He could ask out 2 years from now. That's
fine. Ask out tomorrow. It's a matter of what the Mavericks listen.
Right. And it's just also like, we're talking about 300 and something mil,
Right.
for a max contract, but also like, are people taking into account of how a team has to acquire him? Because with the new CBA, you
Yeah.
can't trade 7 first-round picks, so you're gonna have to at least settle for.
God, that's gonna be that's gonna be so crazy moving forward. Where it's just like, for anybody who doesn't understand what Jose's talking about, once you're over a particular level of the salary cap, the CBA restricts your future draft pick trading. Which
Yep.
honestly, I think trading, like, I hate protected picks. I think teams should get rid of protections because it just screws up all this stuff, and that, of course, the Mavericks would have lost their pick this year if it wasn't protected. But that's
And
it. I hate that element of it. I I want the Mavericks to build through the draft. So
right. And then also, like, you're gonna lose restrictions on your MOE, so you're not gonna be able to pick up a Dante DiVincenzo like the Warriors were able to do this past off season. Also, like, you're just gonna really have to hit on, even your second rounders, and the Mavericks have no second rounders. Sure, they could buy into it, but it's like, well, at this point, we're scrapping at the bottom of the barrel to acquire talent just because we have Luka and Kyrie. And is that going to be good enough going forward? Because, oh man, I just, because as much as people acknowledge the Luka timeline, we still got Jason Kidd as the head coach. So
yeah, but I think we could talk about that once we know a little bit more about the team makeup. I mean, you've heard from me already. I think he's going to start the season on the hot seat just because, yeah.
And how many games are we giving Jason Kidd?
Well, I mean, if they start poorly, it doesn't really, they cannot afford to start poorly. They have to get out on, and we're not talking like if they go 6-6 out of their first 10, they're 6-4. We're talking about firing him. I mean, they can't do this thing where they're 30 games into the season and they're 15-14. Can't do it. They need to be above 500. They need to be, and part of that is the players. It's part of that is the players. Somebody in the chat says they are going to start poorly. I agree, because they're gonna be playing overseas to their preseason games, and historically that's rough for teams. Anyway, Jose, what else you got for us?
Well, I kind of want to wrap this up on my end because I've been talking for a minute.
Great, bud.
But it's just like we're probably gonna commit over 90 million in salary for Luka and Kyrie. And you're trying to fill out the rest of the roster. You're trying to move on Tim. You're trying to move on from Davis Bertans, maybe even JaVale McGee. And you have a lot of other players on the roster who are about to be free agents. Frank Ntilikina, Dwight Powell, Christian Wood. I mean, Reggie Bullock has a team option. Am I correct on that? Yeah. So it's just like we got to make better decisions. And I wish the Mavericks would stop acting like they're a big market team, because nobody wants to sign with you. You have to add in extra to get these players to come to Dallas. It's just like, at some point you have to understand where you are. It's self-awareness. You have to understand where you are in terms of team building. But we'll see. I'm already crazy at this point. I don't know what upside is down. I don't know what side is up. Like,
it's gonna be a long off season. At least we have the pick to bitch about, though. Like, if we didn't have the pick, it'd just be like everybody like quietly crying,
right,
and like getting angry with one another over something like even stupider than a draft pick. So,
well, thank you, Kirk, for hosting the show early in the day, and then also thank you for allowing me up on stage.
Absolutely. Good man. Thanks for hanging out, Jose. Talk soon.
Yes, sir.
If you don't follow Jose is out on Twitter. He runs a pregame spaces during the season on Twitter, fun hangouts. Coming up next is Tom. Got a lot of callers today, so we're going to see how many people we can get through. Tom, what's up?
Hey, Kirk. Well, I'm kind of disappointed we didn't move up. Like, we never move up.
Ever.
What the fuck? I mean,
ever.
Is it legit draft? That's my first question.
Yes, this is if part of why they wanted this pick is because this year's draft projects to be significantly better than next year's draft.
Oh no, but I meant, do you think the draft is legit or is manipulated?
Oh, well, I mean, put it to you like this. San Antonio Spurs, they've been in the lottery 6 times. They've moved up 5 times. The NBA is not rigging shit to boost the San Antonio Spurs because they're such a weird market team. It would always go to somebody. If it was rigged, you'd see a lot more of like, well, look at that. The New York Knicks have a high draft pick kind of thing. So
Okay, thank you. This calms me a bit because whenever I see Lakers shooting like 30 free throws more than the opposition, I always get very, let's say, skeptical.
You and me both, my friend. But when I saw that thing about the Spurs, I'm just like, why would they want him to go there? Like the Spurs are such a just a milk toast franchise. Who cares? Like pairing him, Wemby's face changed during the lottery when Dallas came up. Like you could see him being like, and Windhorst Brian Windhorst of ESPN confirmed that he was at least interested. You know, why wouldn't he be? He wants to win.
Yeah.
Coming to Dallas. Oh well.
Yeah. Okay. So my next question is about all this trade the pick or keep it. I think we talked a bit about what the current meta is in the NBA already last time, and you said to me Mavs are always a bit behind. So I think they will trade it, right? Because currently the meta is keep the pick and develop your players. But what I wanted to ask you, will this meta stay the same after the new CBA? Because if I understood the new CBA correctly, there will basically almost be like a hard cap. So will the veterans then be more attainable to people, to teams that are not in prime locations? Because basically they will have to go, you know what I mean? They will not.
This is an outstanding. This is a great opinion. This is, yeah. And the answer to this is likely that is part of what the NBA was going for when they instituted this, is that sort of thing, pushing players to teams they might not normally consider in terms of the free agents and the veterans. But here's where it gets tricky for me, at least for Dallas. Dallas's books are a mess. So it's like, how does that help Dallas if they're constantly? Because I mean, we pay Bertans for like 3 more seasons. You pay Tim Hardaway for 2 more. Then if you re-sign Kyrie to anything what's approaching his max value, like they're just not going to have room. So it's probably best for the league with what they're doing, but it won't. I don't see it helping Dallas very much.
I see. So then I have a very controversial take. I think not only that we should keep the pick, we should tank for 2 years. Because otherwise we will never we will always try to play catch up. Chat will kill me for this probably. I'm sorry, Chat. But like we are so far behind and we are just trying to catch up the wagon, and it's not possible if we don't get free basically free new blood, right? Fresh new blood with great potential. So I mean they have to give Luka a beer during the game and explain to him, look, the next 2 years just drink yourself, you know, and forget about everything. Maybe go for higher scoring in the NBA. We will just feed you the ball, and yeah, we will lose every fourth quarter. And then we will get 2 more picks, and then actually you can win something, and we can make a dynasty.
It's a fire. It's what the youth would call a fire take. And this is where, when you go back in time and you look back, the move for Kristaps Porzingis was just such. And this is not about KP. This is about the idea of trading for somebody when you don't. They didn't really. I to this day, I still don't think they understood how good Luka Doncic was his rookie year. Because he came in second year and was all NBA player. Like that is so rare. So they clearly didn't understand. And I'm not sure they would have rushed the process that much if they knew. Because those first 2 years of Luka being in the league were going to be your prime years to get some cheap talent. And they had to trade a pick to go get Luka to the Atlanta Hawks. Looking back, Mark Stein reported that one of the things they could have done was take on additional salary in order to move up, and Cuban didn't want to do that. Don't know why to this day. And Cuban denies that, of course, but that drove me crazy. And then you send out 2 more picks for Porzingis, one of which we still owe the Knicks because of this year. It's just like when you do that sort of thing, you're kind of, if it doesn't work out the way it didn't work out for KP, that's why we're kind of in this position, big picture. And Obviously the Mavericks won't do that. Luka won't do that. The only way that would happen is if he went down with an injury, which we of course have no interest in. But I understand why you feel that way, because it's the Mavericks are just in a very difficult spot right now. I mean, they have not acquired a first-round draft pick via any trade or anything in 20 years. 20 years. So I have disagreed with their team building philosophy going back to the post-championship 2012 season. So, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, because I don't see how we have to beat Denver. I was watching Denver, LA, and they are so deep. They have such strong fourth core, so many guards, so much defense. How can you just put two people for MLE or some shit like that and beat them? I don't see how it's winnable. It's okay. We will go out in the second round, but going twice out in the second round is just a disaster, because then Luka will obviously see, well, there's no future anywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to swallow the pill once. And I think for me, the KP trade, I was really unsure of. But when I think they traded Horns for MLE, and then they never used that MLE, right? Or something crazy like that. They let it drop or something. And I mean, it was obvious that Donnie messed up hugely. That it's just basically, okay, maybe they can pick Jokic with the 10th pick, and then magically Dallas will become a contender. But basically that is less than 3% chance, right? That's what?
Right.
And so you have to sit Luka down and just explain this to him. You will not win in the next 2 years anyway. So let's at least give us a shot, right? Give us a shot that we get 3 good young people, and if you don't like them, okay, then you can leave. But at least let's be honest here, we will lie to him. No, this time you can do it. Yeah, you can believe in this team. And of course you will not do it, because I mean, who will guard Jokic? Who will guard MPJ? You will not get these people for MLE or for veteran minimum.
Right.
Where are those people, And I don't know. I think the problem I have sometimes with American sport is they think very short term, one season only, right? Just how to survive to the next year. But I think Luka would understand if you give him a 5-year, a plan or something like that. And if he would buy the plan, then you have a future. But otherwise, just trade him now, because he will never be worth more than now.
Yeah.
If he doesn't buy the plane, trade him. Because otherwise it's just mediocrity. Yeah. But maybe that sells seats and it's enough.
Well, it's a couple of tinkers, and the Mavericks are back in the playoffs. Like small moves, and the Mavericks are back in the playoffs. It's just there's a ceiling right now, and so that's where Ray Garian in the chat says literally every team has at least 2 max players. And one of the things I'm thinking about as we do team building in the future is maybe even having 2 max players is a bad idea for team building, because the way the cap restricts teams. That's and we're gonna learn about this, obviously, and some team is gonna be on the cutting edge. It's gonna be the Mavericks, but we'll see if somebody's able to do it. But Tom, I've got to bring some more folks up. Thank you for hanging out with us.
Thank you, Kirk.
Yeah, you have a good day. We'll talk soon. Hope you come back. All right. Matt has been waiting for a while. We're gonna Matt, how you doing down there?
Hey, Kirk, can you hear me?
I can. Welcome back.
Hey, my dog's probably gonna make an appearance.
Oh,
here.
That's fine. I locked mine downstairs. It's I can't have I have a new setup, and she'll try to eat my rig. So.
Yeah. So, I just want to preface by saying, I love the Locked On Mavs guys.
It worked for us. I love them. Isaac and Nick are fantastic.
Yeah. I really like them. I really love you guys as well. Mavs Moneyball as well. But man, I think I'm kind of like the one guy that came up. I think it was the after show that you guys had after we kept the 10th pick. That I think he was from Australia, and he was like, I don't even know what to do. I was kind of on that for a while, but I think I'm definitely leaning towards keeping the pick and drafting as well. Oh man, it's been kind of difficult to listen to the Locked On Mavs guys because even Isaac said that drafting and keeping the pick would be mismanagement.
I heard that. They clipped that pick because Nick put that on their YouTube shorts. I got that pushed to me and it was like 7 a.m. and I watched it and I was like, I sent Isaac. I typed up a text to Isaac and then deleted it because I was like, nope, not gonna fight. Not gonna start a fight on a Monday morning, whatever day it was, Tuesday morning.
Right. That's kind of a pretty I don't want to say extreme, but that's a pretty. Yeah, I mean, I
would argue that signing JaVale McGee is mismanagement. Well, what do I know?
Right. Yeah. So, but I really love a couple things that have already been said. One, in the after show when Josh was saying that I think we have a tendency to think that somebody at the 10th pick would take a lot more years to develop than what it really would take. So I think we're kind of selling ourselves a little short of thinking the 10th pick is not as good as it really could be. I agree with that. But I think a lot of what like the Locked On Mavs guys are saying is that Luka could leave if things don't turn around. And it's like, yes, but he could also leave if we decide to trade the pick and that doesn't work out, and then there's no hope later.
It's like behaving from a position of weakness, acting from a position of weakness is how you end up in the situation you're trying to avoid. I mean, we have a contributor named Xavier Santos who comes on occasion. He has a lot of fire like in him, and he loves like the CBA portion of things. I remember arguing with him last year about Jalen Brunson. He's like, you just can't sign this guy. You cannot sign this guy. You're going to trap yourself in it. And it's like by what the Mavericks ended up in the bird rights trap with some of the players that they have by trying to avoid the freaking bird rights trap. Like they have terrible books. And yeah. I just see this stuff as a self-fulfilling prophecy where if you go out into the world and you're saying, well, this pick doesn't have value, but we're going to go trade this pick and get a player of value. And I'm like, what? There's some fallacies at play here. Now, when people say it doesn't have value to the Mavs for what the Mavericks need right now, that's what they mean. But I'm just like, I don't know, man. If you do your work in these drafts, you can find the right player. And oddly enough, I trust the Mavericks developmental team. I don't trust a lot about the Mavericks, but they've done well with some of these picks. So let's make a pick.
You know what's funny too is that Nick had a list of picks from
rookies who ended up playing minutes. Yeah, that was a good list. That was an interesting list.
Yeah, well, it's weird because a lot of the picks, if I'm correct, were above 10. So it's like I kind of understand what you're saying, but you're almost proving our point that like having the 10 pick and drafting, we could have a really good chance of having somebody that contributes in the playoffs. Like the list that you're showing us right now.
I mean, if the Mavericks had made it to the playoffs, if they had won 4 more games, Jaden Hardy would have played minutes in the fucking playoffs as the 37th overall pick in round 2. You know?
Yeah. And that would have been great experience for him too.
This whole notion that got like, you don't even know who's going to be there 5 weeks out. Now we'll know in like 3 weeks, like things will start to solidify in a real way. That part, because to me, this is the other part. Portland is going to set the trade market if they decide to trade their pick. Hell, Charlotte could decide to trade their pick and do something with it. The Mavericks are not arguing, like they're not the only team in the first round looking to trade. I think the Pacers might be interested in trading. I think the Wizards might be interested in trading. I think the Jazz are probably going to take somebody. I think the Magic could be interested in trading. And so it is not this linear path where the Mavericks can trade the pick or they can't. That's the other thing. Because it's like you might, and my friend Matt Moore, who I was hoping was going to come in here and ramble about the Denver Nuggets, because it's just like, man, the way the Nuggets get talked about right now reminds me so much of 2011 Mavs, which is like so fucking disrespectful. Anyways, different topic.
I agree completely.
And it's don't even remember what I was talking about. I just want them to consider all options. And I feel like when I see a number of people who I like all echo the same talking point, it's like they were all on an email that I wasn't at work, and somebody knows something that's about to happen that no one has told me. That's what I feel like when I see all these people agree very quickly.
It's and the Tim Cato Athletic survey showed that the fan, at least a sample of the fan base was divided on if we should keep the pick or not. And I think I'm definitely starting to see that now.
Yeah.
Now that we have it, like you said, we really don't know what they're going to do when push comes to shove. I think one thing we have to remember too is that Nico is still fairly new when it comes to the draft and with the Mavericks. So kind of I think you're so right. It's like Nico could be thinking we're gonna use the pick and draft somebody, and we're all over here, butting heads about keeping it or trading it.
Right.
But now that is to say though, like we all know that more than likely Mark Cuban runs everything anyway, so
sure.
It doesn't really so much matter if Nico wants to go a certain way or not. I don't know. But
Dennis Lindsay's in the equation now too, the former Utah Jazz executive. Like there's a lot of things at play. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful. I think we're all skittish because it's just like nothing's worked the last few years. The only thing that's worked is Reggie Jackson. Reggie Bullock. Bullock's the guy who's worked.
Right. Yeah. And I would almost consider him tradable at this point too.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah. The last year of his deal is partially guaranteed, and he looked like burnt toast for a lot of the year.
Because I mean, you would agree that ever since the championship in 2011, like that's how we've been very mediocre to bad, is because we've kept making trades and not going through the draft, right?
So I mean, I do think that's part of it. I also think it's just like every deal is a risk. Every stinking deal is a risk. And we talk about these things like one thing is a risk and the other thing is not. They're different kinds of risk. When we traded for Josh Richardson, everybody was so excited, including us at Mavs Moneyball, including all of us. And then he was awful. Like you just don't know who's going to work and who's not. Like, there's some things where I could say, like, I could say certain things definitively. And there are times I've been right, times I've been wrong. I was very wrong about Jalen Brunson. I think I was very wrong long-term over Dwight Powell, even though Dwight Powell feels like the horseshoe theory of politics where like everybody ends up in agreement, even people who hate him and love him. But I was right about JaVale McGee. I was very right about them screwing up how they built in 2019 because pursuing Giannis is just objectively stupid. And like, that's one of those things that's like been washed out of everybody's memory. And people are like, why are you always talking about this stuff? I'm like, because it has repercussions. When you have available cap space and you don't sign anyone into it, or you go and Alex, now who's the Bulls guard that I always ramble about? Caruso. I got word, and I have no idea if this is true, but I got word a couple months ago that the Mavericks had a verbal agreement with Alex Caruso that year, and they backed out of it the morning that they ended up signing out Boban. And it's just like, all this stuff is like a road not taken path, because the Mavericks have also failed up a lot of times where the people that they wanted ended up being terrible. Like, do you remember the summer that we wanted Hassan Whiteside?
Right.
Like, that's dark. So it's like, maybe it's these things all like, I don't know. It's the key thing that the Mavericks have to do in the future, I think, is they need to acquire more assets by hook or by crook, whether that's players, picks, but they have to have more ammunition, because right now we just don't have a lot. That's why this pick is so important.
Yeah. I agree with everything you're saying. I think that last thing I'll say is that, well, on the argument that, Luka will want to leave if, we end up drafting and it's going to be a player that needs development. Do we really know that though? Like,
no,
do we really know that?
Like, look, you're like, you play with Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. How much are you getting the ball? Like, what can you set a screen? Can you guard? Can you learn a defensive scheme? Those are the questions I have for any rookie.
Right. Yeah. And I think, Bob, I forget who Tom, I think, was the last guy that spoke. I think he made a really good point. Is like, I think, as Luka being the superstar, you can have a conversation and tell him, hey, this is the best path forward. And even if he doesn't agree, like, I am completely with Josh that you have to make the move that's the best move. Period.
And I think they will. I really so just to kind of put a bow on that level of the conversation, I do think they will. It just feels a certain way when we're talking about it. In all honesty, that's why I have these, because I would much rather like speak to someone than type to someone, because I get progressively pissier on Twitter and like, this is not productive.
Yeah. No, I agree. I haven't been on social media for almost like a year and a half or so.
You're a happier person.
I guess YouTube kind of counts as that.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, YouTube can be toxic in its own way too. So,
but yeah, well, I'll let someone else talk. Thanks so much for allowing me up here.
Absolutely, we bring everybody up here. This is a fandom show. Thanks so much, Matt. Talk soon.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna get to everybody because I don't really have anything to do. I took a vacation day. I need to give my dogs a bath, but let's just hang out for a while. So, Jobo, what's up? Give Jobo a second to unmute. He's got a Luka avatar there with a flexing muscle. All right, so if you are unable to find your unmute, I'm gonna pull you off, but I'll leave you in the waiting room. Send me a message in the chat if you are able to join, and then we'll bring you up next. Nav, my guy, it's been a while. What's going on?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can. You sound good.
All right. Yeah, first time using the StreamYard thing, trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Might as well broach it to the chat. First of all, guys, it's been an hour. If you haven't subscribed, please do. If you haven't liked the stream, please do. But basically, like, StreamYard is a different application apart from YouTube, but it lets me stream to multiple places at once and then also see all the comments at once. YouTube is where you guys will, like, chat the most. If we had a different audience, I would probably do, like, Facebook and stuff. But this works. So, but thank you for trying to learn the technology and join us.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing that I don't know, I really just wanted to ask you about and kind of get off my chest was everybody's talking about the 10th pick and trade it or not. I have more of a like philosophical team building,
love it,
like discussion or question. So I've noticed in the playoffs, like when you look at the Lakers, they've had multiple role players, very different guys that step up on various nights that have helped them win. Right? They've had Lonnie Walker, they've had D'Angelo Russell, they've had Rui Hachimura, they've had Austin Reeves, Schroeder, he's been good. Where I think my biggest problem with the Mavs team building philosophy is the notion of, I think Luka's so good and he elevates the players around him so much more, and you can see how much of a drop off Dorian had and Spencer when they went to Brooklyn. But I feel like my hope is that Kyrie Irving demands to go somewhere else and we do a sign and trade, because I actually think the team would be better overall with more players that are above average role players as opposed to another superstar level player. What do you think?
There's a great argument for it. Though I think if you trade a 2029 unprotected pick, you in your head are hoping that it works out to where you have to re-sign him. I think the Kyrie experience is almost its own podcast where you are taking on a big risk. And there's one, what was it? Mavs fan for life. Landon wrote a piece, I don't know, about 15 games into the Kyrie experience, like basically just saying, he's been great since he's been here. A lot of this stuff wasn't called for, in terms of like Kyrie's reputation and like, here's the stuff he does for people. And I'm not necessarily here to comment on that in so much as like the Kyrie experience usually starts a certain way and it ends another way. And we have history. So by leaning into Kyrie, you're kind of living on borrowed time, and it's almost a whole different problem. So I see your argument for that is what I'll say. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I wouldn't mind it, but I also, it's just tough because I have no idea what kind of contractual value he even has. Like, what? I mean, we'll talk about this in free agency, but like, I personally wouldn't want to give the guy more than 4 for 100. He is contractually not owed, but like, you could sign him for a 5-year max up to $270 million. Like,
Which would be crazy.
Crazy, right? So it's just like
absolutely crazy. Yeah.
So I honestly, I just don't know what his value is because who wants him? Who would sign for him? It's a great question.
Yeah, I like, because as great as he is, like getting to watch him, like he's unbelievable, like on the basketball court. But given his age and the injury history and the off the court stuff, like I don't think he's the right guy to pair next to Luka. And actually, I wish going back, we like if there's ways we could have paired first round picks with players to try and get more above average players that aren't all stars, right? But like are above average, like getting a Bojan Bogdanovic. I know his age isn't there either, but like I think the better way to team build would be to try and get more above average role players that on any given night, one of them can step up. So you don't need to rely on your role players as heavily, because we all complain about how much, they're like, if everybody could just be a couple spots down on the roster, right? Then this team, Maxi's, great, but like he should be coming off the bench. We shouldn't need him this much. Tim Hardaway Jr., same thing. I feel like if we had more players that have the potential to pop off, and are more, but also surround Luka with more defensive minded. Yeah. I think that would be much better. Also, I think Luka is similar to LeBron in terms of team building, where Luka's not as good a defender, but I think, the Lakers, when you surround LeBron with shooting and defense, they're awesome. I think Luka would be the same thing. If you surround him with shooting and defense, the team will be good. We're lacking both of those things right now.
Well, thanks so much for hanging out. That's a different vein of question. I'm glad you brought it up to talk about it. We'll have plenty of time to talk about it this offseason.
Yep, sounds good. I appreciate it.
All right, talk soon.
Bye.
Okay, we're gonna go to my man Brian next, who's been patiently waiting, and then we'll get to Mason, and then we'll get to Krishna, and then I will go give my dogs a bath. Brian, what's up?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Dan, silky smooth voice again. No,
my
face.
guy.
We don't get to see you. It's very sad.
I could turn my camera on, but I'm
see, it's a video show. Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, brother. How about you?
I'm great.
Man, I'm just pacing back and forth in my garage. Usually I bring you complaints, vitriol, fire and brimstone, things of that nature. But we kept our pick. And despite all the people attempting to piss me off with all this talk of trading it for centers who, quite frankly, get played off the floor in the playoffs.
Are you the gif of Shaq who's like, bad vibes, good mood, all that shit where he's swatting it away?
I'm trying to be right now. I'm shaking off the Jared Allen trade rumors. I don't need that in my life right now.
I didn't hate that one.
The thing is, I like Jared Allen a lot. I've liked him since his days in Brooklyn. But
when are you a Texas guy?
Him
University of Texas.
I went to A&M for a year, so objectively not a Texas guy.
Sure,
but I don't mind Texas players though. They put out some really good players, so I don't mind it. My thing is more that he's skinny and he can't guard in space. And if you're gonna be a center getting paid really more than like $15 million a year next to Luka, you need to be able to do at least one of those things. Okay. Like he's a good rim protector, but on a switch, he's dead. And against like a really big center like Jokic or Embiid or even a Sabonis, maybe he's dead meat, right? Like if Mitchell Robinson can bully you around like that, then it's a problem. But I just don't think we need to be giving up multiple assets to get one guy. Like after we've already made I don't think we have enough assets to be trying to consolidate them after we've already made the Kyrie trade. We've already done that once, and we did it for a pretty high value, I guess. Like we sold high on Dorian, we sold high on Spencer as much as we love them. The 2029 pick, nobody's thinking about that anytime soon. It could be valuable, who knows? But we sold high on the guys that we had, and we got a guy that we really think can be a part of our plan going forward, at least for the next 2 years. Maybe we trade him then later down the line. Maybe he says something else stupid online and gets himself. I don't know, but I am more concerned about just keeping this pick. And actually, that's what I was going to say. rather than questions and complaints, I actually come to you with 2 proposals. I think if they want to trade this pick, you can. There's a way to do it. I wouldn't do it how they're doing it though, or at least how it's being talked about. I would wait, and thank God they can't trade the pick before draft night, because Lord knows as soon as the final buzzer on game 6 or 7, whatever the finals is going to be, there'd already be a trade in principle agreed to by the Mavs sending the 10th pick out to get Gary Trent or some shit, like something we don't even need. But they should just wait, see who falls to 10. Obviously, they've got to draft before they can trade the pick in the first place. I don't know if they can trade immediately after they draft a guy or if they have to wait until after the draft is over. It's one of those two. I would, before the draft, I would start working the phones with both OKC and Utah. And I would start conversations with them. And if Cason Wallace or Asor Thompson, whichever one of those guys, because I think it's going to be one of them that falls to 10. With Orlando and Indy in front of us, I don't think Jarris or Taylor Hendricks are going to make it, sadly. Taylor Hendricks is my guy. If he's there, you just take him and you run. Probably the same with Jarris, although I'm a little less excited about that. But if neither of those guys are there, you should do one of 2 things. You should call OKC, say, hey, we've got this really nice player at 10. You could probably use this player. Why don't you give us 12 and 37 or 12 and like Kenrich Williams and move up 2 spots? Then we can move up and take the center that we really want in Derek Lively.
Kendrick Williams would work.
Listen, long love another Texas guy. He's from Waco, not Dallas, but this is fine. But I love Kenrich Williams. I think that he's a winning player, despite the situations that he's been. He's a good shooter. He's a solid defender. He's a good hustle guy. He just does his job. Like you don't have to worry about whether or not he's goofing off or slacking off or getting beat on back cuts or anything. He just does his job. And sometimes that's all you want.
Yeah.
So I would take that and the 12th pick and then just take Derek Lively. I would take that and run. Or if you get the sense that, because I think OKC is the first team behind us that would take Derek Lively if we don't just take him at 10, which, by the way, I wouldn't mind them doing that either if Hendricks and Jarris don't fall. But why take him at 10 when you can take him at 12 and get something extra?
My theory is that Leonard Miller already has a guarantee from them at 12
from OKC. Okay, yeah. So then
I'm
works out.
making that shit up. I have no it just that feels like a fucking Oklahoma City guy.
I mean, they've been one, yes, he definitely fits the mold of what they want, and 2, like they've been rumored together so much, like since like weeks before the lottery. It wouldn't surprise me if they've already like kind of verbally promised him, hey, if you're there at 12, you're coming to us, right? So like a Tyrese Halliburton type of deal. But if that doesn't work out, or if it does, if you know they're going to take Leonard Miller and you don't have to worry about them taking Lively, I would call Utah and say, hey, you're at 16. You can probably get a good player there. You can definitely get a good player at 10. Why don't you give us 16 and 28? You'll move up 6 spots. We'll take Derek Lively at 16 because the next team that would even consider drafting him at that point would be the Rockets at 20. So you don't have to worry about anything before that. So you can just take him 6 spots later than you would have. And then at 28, take Sidi Sissoko, any number, like some wings who could, or a wing rather, that could actually come in pretty immediately and contribute, at least on the defensive end. Offensively, it would be a work in progress, but he's better off than a lot of people think. And if he falls that far, would be a really, really good value. And there are a bunch of other guys around there like that. Like there are some that are projects like Max Lewis, but there are really good players from 1 to 32 in this draft. At 28, you can get a really good value and add that to, adding a player that is going to help you right now in Derek Lively. So they've got options. They got to be smart about it.
Regarian in the chat is very opposed to the notion that Blakely's going to be a riser, and like draft is silly season. Luka fell to 3.
Yeah, dude, there's no way of knowing, man.
Everybody is an idiot when it comes to draft time, and I think that's kind of like and I'm thinking about this in the context of Istak's article where he talked about it's like nobody good has been taken at 10.
Oh God, don't get me started on that guy.
But that was the gist of his article, and I'm like, well, that's partially because what happens is teams lose their minds between like picks 8 and picks 15. You just see teams do wild stuff sometimes.
Yeah, but then like you'll see people who will have articles, and I'll see tweets like that. They'll say, "Yeah, look at the history of who's been taking a 10 the last."
Oh yeah,
years.
I hate that.
Okay,
That's a
Look at who goes 11 to 14 in the last 6 years. Like, and tell me like the Donovan Mitchells, the Tyler Herros, the Bam
it's not
Adebayos.
Johnny Davis's fault that he sucks. Like it's that somebody did something stupid and took
or
him
that he
there.
got taken 2 spots before
Right.
Jalen Williams. Like,
Yeah.
the good players are there. You just gotta
pick the good players, and it's like, yeah, but that happens every year, and that's kind of the point that I've been thinking about in terms of this. Yeah, Cade Johnson says lots of teams take big swings on projects. The Mavs won't. That I actually think is true.
Yeah,
they're gonna pick somebody. They're gonna pick somebody with a lower ceiling but a higher floor. But they're still got. It's just. I don't know. We're going to be talking about this all summer. So, Well, thank you, Brian. You got anything else? We've got a lovely tour of your garage.
Yeah, I was just about to say I've been pacing back and forth this
Great.
entire time. You've seen my sailing.
I mean, we got a guy, Mason, who I'm bringing up next. I'm pretty sure is driving, which is outstanding.
Oh boy,
so
that should be exciting. Way more exciting than my garage. But yeah, just please don't trade all that stuff for Jared Allen. Man, I love Jared Allen. Let him stay in Cleveland. Let them figure it out.
Yeah. All right, Brian. Talk soon.
All right, my boy. Peace.
Excellent stuff. As always, Mason coming up next. What's going on, Mason? How are you?
Can you hear me, Kirk?
I can. You are driving. This is outstanding. This is great.
I am. I've been driving from Michigan for the past 4 days. I drove up. I'm a farmer. I drove up to Michigan to grab some pigs.
Sure. better draft capital than the Mavericks have. Okay.
Yeah. I'm willing to make the investment. Kirk, I've been a long-time Mavs follower for a long time, and I feel like I'm gravitating more towards your content because I feel like they have a more optimistic outlook on things.
True.
But it also doesn't seem realistic with just the way things have gone since I've been a Mavs fan since I was a kid, so 25 years. And, I feel like we've been in this holding pattern since 2011 that, trying to find someone to pair with Dirk and making short-term decisions for that since then. And it's been pretty frustrating. And I feel like you're more realistic in that, hey, our management and our ownership specifically has been questionable, to say the least.
I mean, he's had a little bit. I'm very hard on Mark, and I think it's justified. But I also think that his intentions are good. Something he said to me when he came on our show last year was like, "If you were me, wouldn't you do this?" And it's like, well, yeah. But I would also hope somebody in my life would be like, you need to not do this. You are the money man. You are the face. You are like, he's a great salesperson. One of the things the Mavericks have really succeeded at the last 10 years is telling us how good of a job they do.
They're great marketing guys. Guys. Yeah. I feel like it's almost on the, I don't like to use this word a lot because it's overused, but they almost gaslight the fan base into thinking that everything's okay all the time when they're clearly making terrible decisions, or they make a terrible decision and they don't say, oh yeah, we messed that up, but we're trying to do better in the future. It would make everyone feel better if they would just admit when they're wrong sometimes. They don't have to say they're horrible at their jobs, but
that was what was great about like McGee finally getting to play towards the second half or the last 15 games where it was just like, yeah, he was signed to do this and oh no. And it's like, that's okay. They should have known better, but I can like, once you get over that, then I'll, you move on. We all make mistakes.
I feel like Jason Kidd almost accentuates that problem too. Trying to convince us that, I don't know, just endless beefs with Mavs Twitter, I think is just so silly. I feel the same way when players come out and try to fight with the public because they're worried about being criticized on social media. I just always feel like ignoring that completely is always the better route.
Shout out to Damian Lillard, man who loves to start weird Twitter beefs. Yes.
So I wanted to talk real quick just about the draft and I guess the direction of where we're going.
Absolutely.
I personally think we should keep the pick. I just think it's a better long-term strategy to try to build through the draft. And I know it's been said a bunch, so I'm not like saying anything new. But I think realistically, when we made the trade for Kyrie, that was almost signing our fate for trading this draft pick. Not that they knew they were going to be in the draft, but just that's kind of the direction we've been put on. And I don't think you can reverse course. I think they should, because I think it's probably better long term, but I don't think they will.
Right.
Just from trading a first round pick to get Kyrie and trading away rotation pieces, and thinking that that's going to be the way we build our team. And it all just kind of stems back from acting like we're a bigger market than we are. And in a way, we are a big market, but in a lot of other ways, no one, free agent wants to come here. So, and of course, no one can figure out why. But I kind of feel like there's been one cohesive thread throughout since after 2011, and that's our ownership.
That's part of it. I also think that there are realistically 3 free agent markets. There's Los Angeles, and there's Miami. That's where all these guys want to be, and they're lying if they say otherwise. Because if you're a rich young man, who wouldn't want to live in a place like that? But I do think there are some common threads where it's just, everybody, when Cubans talked with some of these older players, particularly the guys who were around when he first came into the league, they talked about how cool it was, all the stuff that he did. But it's like, well, none of those guys ever came to the Mavericks. So they liked you, didn't like you that much. And
right.
That's the part that matters. And I don't know, we always overestimate free agency, where it's just like, oh, we can get these guys to come here. And then realistically, the Mavericks would have 2 roster spots, and they don't really have the money. So it's a challenging situation all the way around.
It is. I really wish we would, and of course, obviously, this is really difficult to do. Otherwise, everyone would do it. But I look at the Warriors as the model franchise for how to build a good team, and it just seems like they draft really good players consistently. Obviously, they haven't hit every single draft pick they've made, but just with Steph, Clay, Draymond, and then moving on to the next generation with Kuminga, and they gave up on Wiseman, but Moody too.
But they had bites at the apple. The apple. It was opportunities. It's with the ones that didn't work, there were guys that did. I mean, right now they're apparently looking to shop Kuminga. Moody's kind of an interesting guy. They did send off Wiseman, but it's bites at the apple. And sometimes things just aren't going to go your way. And I think the Mavericks ran into a situation almost 20 years ago with Mark's first draft where they used almost all the draft capital they had. And then after that, Mark was just out on the draft. They were good in 2003. They were good in 2005 whenever they traded away Antoine Walker. And then they were just kind of dead in the water for, 13 years until Luka.
Yeah. Yeah, it just – and I think for the Warriors, I don't know what the perfect transition plan is from the older generation to the new one. Clearly, the Mavericks didn't have a great transition plan with kind of just – people will say that we wasted Dirk's last years, and I can understand that. But it also is just really difficult to figure out how to keep your current amazing players that have won you, for the Warriors' sake, won you multiple championships. How do you keep them together, but also add in new pieces without, having people get mad at each other or whatever you want to say about that? But I feel like the Mavs, I feel like almost this draft was a blessing in disguise because, like you said, and I think this seems to be a deeper draft than the next one. It seems like it's, okay, well, there's talent to be had at where we're at, and we're probably, I say this now because we didn't expect us not to miss the playoffs this year, but I just predict in the future with Luka's talent, we're not going to miss the playoffs again. It seems like, okay, well, now's our chance to get a really good player and not think, what's the next move in the next 10 seconds?
Yep. No, I agree. Well, man, we're losing a little bit of connectivity. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I think we did.
Appreciate it, Kurt.
All right.
Keep up the good work.
All right. Talk soon. Drive safe. All right, coming up next and finally is Krishna. Shout out to the guy in the chat who called me a simp for not liking Jonathan Isaac for vaccine-related reasons. That's a new one. I mean, I get called like do a little background into me whatsoever and see what, see if you think I'm one of the, never mind. Go ahead, Krishna. You're muted.
It's my physical mic, my bad.
Oh, you look good.
I think it was last night. The Locked On Mavs guys were talking about it, and I was like, please, a 10-foot pole is not enough to keep Jonathan Isaac away right now. I think ultimately, like, I agree with everyone. Like, everyone's saying they want to keep, like, draft someone, right? And I understood Isaac's sentiment on keeping the pick. I think I don't want the Mavs to just pick at 10. I do want them to make other moves. And I think my ultimate thing is I do want them to draft someone in this draft. And I think just picking at 10 makes me less confident in them doing anything else to improve the roster.
Mm-hmm.
But my other worry is I think they're more likely to trade the pick for a quote unquote guarantee player than trade the pick for someone young and a future pick or, some other pick in this draft, which is what I would prefer, right? Like there are so many teams with 2 picks in this draft, like Utah's at 9 and they have, I think someone, Brian mentioned 16, Orlando's at 12. There's like a team in the 20s who have like 19 and 21 or something. Like there are teams that have 2 picks. And what we're going to see now more than ever is teams are just not going to be able to pick a ton of players just because of 1, the CBA, but 2, like roster space. Like you can't just like roster a ton of young guys. Like it's not really reasonable. And the whole idea of like a timeline and like what does it look like? It's like my philosophy and my thinking is you have a plan, but ultimately things deviate from your plan because your plan is not meant to be the end all be all. It's meant to be a guideline, and things go against it, things change, and that's normal. But my frustration is it seems like the Mavs never have a plan, and then they act like they did have a plan, and then when things don't go to their supposed plan, they act like they're making a plan.
Well, did you? This is a bizarre reference, but it made my week when I was watching a back and forth with Chuck Cooperstein talking to Josh. Did you happen to see this tweet he sent out? It's killed me. He said when talking about the trade for Dinwiddie, Coop says it absolutely was a win. They don't get to the Western Conference Finals without it. The problem is that everyone wants to put together 5-year plans. It was bad for the Russians. It was bad for Texas football. And it's bad in the transactional world of the NBA where your job is based on result, not process. First of all, anytime you make a reference to Soviet 5-year plans, I'm going to die. Like I was laughing out loud when I saw this because it's like he was talking about like end result, whatever. But the Mavericks have had 5-year plans, like the whole plan powder, like what? And they're shitty plans. Like my wild solution is to stop having shitty plans, like realistic plan. Like maybe like draft, like have better players, like just small solutions. So like I hear what you're saying. Like I hear what Coop's saying, where he's like, your plan, if you're gonna have a plan, it has to have some built-in flexibility. Like with the Mavericks, for example, I keep referencing this. They had no idea Luka was going to be an all NBA player in his second year. And that's what they were building towards in 2019 because they thought they were going to be able to pair Giannis with Luka and KP. That's what they thought. Fucking crazy town now that we see this in advance, but it was just nuts. Anyway.
I mean, exactly, right? Like the problem is the Mavericks are the guy that goes to the test, right? And they just didn't study at all, but they think like, oh, you know what? I'm going to do fine. I'm going to ace this test for sure.
That's right.
And there's no way I'm going to fail at all. And there's nothing that could go wrong. And then they get to it. They realize they know nothing on the test and they flunk it completely. And then they go, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do next. And that's exactly what that offseason was. But the problem is that offseason doesn't happen in isolation. And decisions you make now always have ripple effects. But the thing that is often, I think, forgotten about just particularly from this ownership, because the common thread is always this ownership. And for a long time it was management, though that's changed, but how much, I don't know, is that there isn't a learning of lessons. There isn't a like reevaluation at any single point. There's just a moving forward without actually looking back and seeing, okay, like where did we make mistakes? Like to me, the biggest evidence that this team doesn't know what it's doing is the fact that it signed JaVale McGee over someone like Bruce Brown. Like Bruce Brown feasibly is on the similar contract to JaVale McGee. But the fact that your cap is so bad that you could not afford to give Bruce Brown the MLE that he got because you needed to pay Jaden Hardy, which I'm not against paying Jaden Hardy for the 3 years, right? I'm all for that.
Right.
But the fact that your cap was so bad that you couldn't pay a little bit more for Bruce Brown and you instead had JaVale McGee.
Well, I mean, that was never a chance, though. Like, they never had a chance at Bruce.
Sure, but
I know what you mean. It's like, why would you use your money on this guy?
Yeah, and it's also just the philosophy, right? Like, why is your cap in such a place that you have so little flexibility to move off of contracts and move off of players? And ultimately, like, it's so frustrating because so many other teams, even the Dallas Metroplex in other sports, have learned this lesson that they cannot sign big time players. Like, so many of the other teams in the Metroplex have just pivoted to getting young talent, trading up, using the draft. Like, the point, the draft should be a team's best friend. You are getting young, talented players who have a chance to become something more on extremely cheap contracts. Like, that should be your best friend. Like, I don't understand why the team has become so hesitant. And it feels like they've taken, like you mentioned earlier, Mark has taken his like 20, like when he first bought the team, he's taken that lesson and still kept it now, even though the perspective and the landscape of the NBA is so different. And yeah, okay, Bruce Brown wasn't this good in Brooklyn as he is now in Denver. A lot of that is Jokic, but like I think we can all concede that Luka is that good. Like I think he could equally make someone like Bruce Brown still effective, and that's the point. Like you need to get players who, yes, like obviously you're going to have players on your roster who are going to play up because they play with Luka, but you still need to have players that are competent on a certain level when Luka is not there or Luka is like, not having an off game. And that's the frustrating thing about this team is, I don't know what they're going to do. I would like Lively. I think I'm high on Lively. I would like Rafael Barlow and Sam Vecini's sentiment on it is the trend that they've noticed, and I've felt like this too, is a lot of big guys who end up being some of the best in their draft often are undervalued at the beginning of the draft. I think of guys like Bam Adebayo, Nikola Jokic, Walker Kessler from last year. I mean, like, I remember so many people last year saying, like, what the heck is Walker Kessler? He's probably not going to be an NBA center. And of course, like, that's opinion. That's what happens when you watch so many players and you just like, it's hard to evaluate and hard to completely project. But my frustration is my feeling is that the Mavericks are going to try to go for what they think is a guarantee when, like you mentioned earlier today, is that risk is so variable, right? It's not binary, right? It's not 1 and 0. It's like 0.1 and like 0.9 and like 0.8. And to me, ultimately, people might say like, oh, a player will develop in 2-3 years, but you can also get something out of a rookie in their first year. Yeah, maybe it's not 20 and 10, but maybe they give really great effort on the defensive end. Maybe they show that they can play in a switching system. Like, those are still things you can get out of a rookie, even if it's not through the counting stats. And ultimately, I'm just going to wait till the draft. Because like I can get frustrated, I can get mad, but I don't know. It's a waiting and seeing game, which sucks. But that's what it is.
They can't move the pick beforehand, right?
No, because that's the same thing that happened last year. So they can
move it on draft night.
Yeah, like the trade will be official on draft night, which I think is
supposed
smart
to get out. The NBA does not like that stuff.
Yeah,
got
they
out
don't.
in advance.
Yeah, they don't. And it'll be interesting to see if they do try to move it before draft night. I think, like, to me, a dream scenario is you move back to 12 with Orlando and you try to get one of their bigs. Not Isaac. I would love like a Wendell Carter Jr. I think there's like no way you get him, but like someone like that who I think would probably get paid in a few years, but is just under contract with like enough money, I think is someone who would really kill because you just need a lot of new starters on this team. Like, you just need to refresh the squad, and it's going to be so difficult. And I have my doubts about it, but trading this pick back and getting someone else in this draft and getting another young player from somewhere else, I think is what you need to completely refresh it. And it's going to be difficult. We'll see what they do. We'll see what happens. Personally, I'm just not putting expectations, because I think if I put any expectations, it's going to be swing for me. But hopefully everyone else has a good day, and take care.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Talk soon. Okay. We've had a couple more people join, and because I have a policy of when I have nothing to do, we're going to get to everybody who takes time out of their day to come spend time with us. Jobo, you're back in it. Are you able to talk this time? Saw you hop in there.
I am, and I can turn on my video too.
How we doing? Welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah. Does it sound okay in the car? I can shut
Yeah,
off the
sounds
AC
good.
if I need to. All right, cool. Hey, for anybody who is, I guess, not super plugged into what's been happening with the CBA, y'all have referenced it, a little bit. I'm just wondering what the biggest change is, as far as, like, I've heard a lot of people talk about that having 3 stars is going to be just near impossible now. What exactly is changing that's going to mess with this stuff?
That's going to be part of it, I think. I honestly can't speak enough to it. We have a contributor, Mavs Moneyball, CBA Mavs, his name's Scott. I've been kind of needling him, but he has a real life, and he'll write. I think he'll do it closer to free agency, because it doesn't really matter now. But there are some explainers. Basically, the stuff doesn't really take effect until next offseason. So, like, even though the Mavericks are not in a good cap situation, I'm pretty sure we either get the taxpayer mid-level again or a different kind of mid-level exception. So we're going to be able to sign somebody if Cuban has the, past Kyrie. They're going to be able to do something else if they have that. If I'm pretty sure that they're going to be able to do something. It's a matter of what.
Yeah. Man, I will say during the lottery, I was just happy that we got 10. I know some people were really sad about the lottery and that we didn't work out. Honestly, I was just relieved that the doomsday scenario that we've all been dreading did not happen. And it's kind of sad, honestly, that that's where we're at. It's just like, yes, we got the 10th pick. Let's see what happens with it. But that's where I'm at. A lot of the pieces in the Mavs organization, top to bottom, just seem to not be cohesive, which is confusing to me. Like, the kind of team that Kid wants to coach is not the kind of team that we have.
Yeah.
And he's still here. And, I know they're buddies, so that's probably not going to change unless next season is also a colossal failure.
Yeah, it's like unless Luka and Kyrie are like, this guy's out, he's going to stay unless they're like bad. Like I think Cuban is kind of understandably doubling down on the choice, because like there was nobody like Jason Kidd was out of the league. Like I don't think anyone would have given him a shot. I really don't.
Jeez. And it's funny because a month ago we were talking about how it kind of sucks that Kid's going to stick around, but if there's no one better out there, then it is what it is. And now when you look at the names, it's like, man, would be really interesting to see if they would revisit that, but I'm assuming at this point it's too late to make a coaching change. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they will. That's just not. Cuban doesn't particularly think about since he's been here. Don Nelson, Avery Johnson, Rick Carlisle, Jason Kidd.
Jeez.
I mean, Cuban's been owner since '99, 24 years, 4. Pretty great.
And the current trio of Cuban, Nico, and Kidd. Well, I guess I'd add a fourth variable there, and just like the cap situation.
Yep.
Is that it's almost a perfect cocktail when you consider Kidd's what's the opposite of willingness? Just his refusal to adjust scheme based on players. Like, JaVale was horrible, and he's probably just washed, and it is what it is. But what they're asking him to do is just the opposite of what he could do right now.
Right.
And so when I think about how this team has such limited options to acquire new players and to get more pieces in here, and then you combine that with the fact that whoever we do get, you're probably not going to get a coach who's going to adjust things for that player. It's just tough times here.
Well, team building, assembling coaching staffs, all that stuff is hard because I think one of the things that gets we're talking about a little bit more, but it's something I didn't really think about for a very long time is these players make so much damn money. How the hell are you having a coach that does anything that speaks to them? I mean, they make so much more money than the coaches. You bring in a Hall of Famer like Jason Kidd, and even still, you wonder if that guy can get through to Luka. It's a difficult thing. I mean, one friend of mine, always who's a media guy, says, if you're going to replace your coach, you better know who you're doing it with before you even fire the guy. And like that's why it's like it's somebody was saying to me, and I called for Jason Kidd's head. So it was like, who are you going to replace him with? And I was like, I don't care, a chair. And unfortunately, it's not realistic because it's got to be.
Yeah,
because it's like, well, who's the Sweeney sits on the bench with him. I've asked some questions to people. It's like, why isn't Sweeney a head coach? And it's the 82 game grind is real. Like look at what it's done to like Doc Rivers, who has become like he's lost so many freaking game 6 and game 7s. It's just like coaching is really, I think it's really important and really difficult, and also sometimes doesn't matter that much. It's such a bizarre, like you're part-time camp counselor while being, a risk board strategist. It's a mess of a position, which is why he has so many assistant head coaches. I make fun of it, but it's just like there's real reasons why they do this. And
sure.
yeah, I'm just not sure what happens. I think he'll probably start the season. I mean, he's going to start the season as head coach, but it also wouldn't entirely surprise me if he doesn't finish it if the Mavericks get off to a slow start.
Yeah. Well, that opinion is in the locker room now when you have current Mav Kyrie Irving, the famous quote from a couple years ago when he was talking about Steve Nash and like, well, and of course I'm going to botch it, but
no, he murdered him.
He could be our coach. I could be our coach, like, I guess we'll let him coach. It was something like that. And it was just kind of like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
But we got Stars game 1 tonight that I'm excited about. They're taking my mind off of my Mavs heartbreak, which I appreciate. And before I go, I just wanted to say I really appreciate you guys keeping up content even in the off season. I would totally get it if y'all wanted to just hibernate for these few months that y'all have, because y'all go hard during the season.
Well, when I stop, it's like, for me, it's like going to the gym. When I stop going to the gym, I'm like, I don't really want to go back.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the shit.
Yeah. I get it. I went on a trip this last week, and I had some long flights getting there and back, and being able to download the live shows and y'all's your shows you do with Josh made the plane rides a lot easier. So I appreciate you guys.
Thanks so much. You have a nice day and drive safe.
Yes, sir. You too.
All right, we're gonna go to Matt. He's gonna end us out here. Matt, good looking hat you have on there. It's an old school.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
I wanted to talk to you about just like kind of the overall state of the league and the talent around the league. And I think that's something that's getting overlooked a lot when we look at how close the Mavs might be. Because, like in a nutshell, yes, like that second half of the season last year after the Kyrie trade, it sucked to watch. But one thing I always took away was they were there in a ton of games. Like I ran the numbers close to the end of the year, and despite the fact that they were a lottery team, post Kyrie trade, like they were tied for the fewest double-digit losses in the league. Like they were there, and like I felt like they were just a piece or two away from being very much in the mix of things. And then you look at the league, like the Lakers are in the Western Conference Finals right now, and like I don't think they're that good. Like AD is at his best. Yeah, like LeBron's a kind of a shell of himself. AD is, flip-flops being good game to game. And like when you take that into account and then you look at the Mavs and like they have Luka, who at worst is a top 5 player in the world, at best is probably the best player in the world. You look at Kyrie, who is an elite offensive weapon, and then you look at the slim assets they do have, and like you think like, I don't know, maybe I'm blinded by optimism, but I think like there's a real opportunity for them to kind of just shuffle things up this year and be a top 3 team in the West with a real opportunity to compete.
I think that's right. I mean, it's so
because like think about even like going back to trading 10 and like look, I am far from a fan of Clint Capella, and I think he's definitely on like the downward turn of his career. But like if you take this team and you add Clint Capella and DeAndre Hunter to it, you keep Josh Green, you get him back in a position where he can guard smaller guys as opposed to having to guard big 3s and 4s, and like you start a team that's Kyrie, Josh Green, Luka, DeAndre Hunter, and Clint Capella. Like going back to those games that they lost down the stretch, I don't think there's like I think they're better than the Lakers if that's their 5.
I mean, that's why I think that's why the Mavs got so much heat for eventually, tanking, because the West is just so weak outside of Denver to a degree. I mean, I don't think anyone really truly understood how bad Memphis was. I think Mavs fans did, but kind of a different deal. But it's just that's kind of the argument for how a small move it makes the Mavericks. Because do you see the Pelicans getting better? Do you see like the Grizzlies are going to like the West is going to be a mess again next year? So it's a couple of things, and we're right back in this is the argument.
Yeah, and that's why like going back to trading the pick again, it's like I would love a Walker or a Hendricks, and I think those guys are like fairly plug and play as far as just kind of being like athletic energy guys. You can slot into that 4 and they work relatively quickly. But like when the alternative is you trade that and you find a way to get 2 guys back, whether that be like even a Gafford and Kispert, which again, I'm not super high on like those guys, but like you plug them in with the 2 guys you have there. And then maybe you find a way to move like Reggie for, another guy who can maybe guard guys who are a little bit bigger, or, for that minimum, you bring in like a Jay Crowder, who I still think has a little bit of something left, and he doesn't seem to want to be in Milwaukee again, even if they'll even have him. And then you use your mid-level exception to bring in someone like Vando, or I probably like Dylan Brooks more than you do, but I think if you could find a way to get him for that cheap, I think you try and make it work. Maybe like I don't know. I feel like there's options
Dylan
there.
Brooks would actively kill me. I think I would just die if I had to root for Dylan fucking Brooks. But sure, you put that out in the universe. I'm just kidding. It's fine.
But yeah, and I think that's why they'll ultimately end up trading the pick. It's just because, like you said, like the West is a mess, and you can get there with the guys with Luka and Kyrie. I don't think it takes too much to get you to where you need to be competitive.
I mean, it's a good argument, Matt. It really is. And I think that's what the Mavs think too. It's just we have different kind of understanding at the moment of how much a draft pick could help because of the historical arguments. And I'm just like, well, if you got Kyrie and Luka doing, 65% of the possessions, all everybody else has to do is go stand in the corner, cut to the basket, dunk the ball.
Guard, rebound.
Okay, my friend Josh is in the chat, and he says it would kill Kirk if the Mavs signed Brooks. He wouldn't know what to do with a young, talented wing defender. Josh, watch a fucking Grizzlies game.
He's not young. He's like 27.
But he's not like. Remember, we're Mavs fans. Anybody under the age of 30 is young to us. Like that's
fair. But I do think there's a world, and like look, like if you change the environment for him, I think there was that report where he was like, oh, he wants an increased offensive role. I don't think he's getting that anywhere.
How? He shoots more than any player we've had on the Mavericks since Luka has been here, other than Luka and KP.
So I think he would have to accept that reality when he's looking for new scenery. But beyond that, like the Grizzlies, I think we can agree are a mess, not only from like their organizational, like locker room issues, and like the fact that they're just a super young team. Like he was being 27, 28, whatever he is, like he was like one of the vets in the locker room. And if like you switch that up and put him in a position where like, I don't know. And like, look, Luka hasn't ever really demonstrated too much leadership, and Kyrie certainly isn't a world-beating example of leadership. But I don't know, maybe you put him in a locker room where there's more stability and veterans, like someone can get in his ear and tell him to act right. And like he is definitely, like to Josh's point, like I mean he's just an all NBA defender, so like that counts for something. And if like he accepts the idea that like, okay, what you're going to do on offense is shoot open threes, like like there's a ton of ifs there, but if
Yeah.
those ifs happen, like it's a huge positive.
Well, I hear you. It's going to be like this is why having picks is so important to me as a person who runs a website, because it's like you can siphon off your off season into different things you can talk about, where we've jumped ahead to some free agency stuff. And I think it's great because the draft is only so much, but it's like there's basketball. And I'm going to write about this weekend if I can. If the Mavericks ever pushed out the way, like who they're talking to in terms of workouts and stuff, we would have stuff to talk about forever. Because it's like we love talking about this basketball stuff, so it's great. Well, this is a great way to end the show. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's all. It'll be interesting to see where things net out. Hoping for the best, expecting the worst. I think that's the way to handle every Mavericks offseason.
Isn't that the truth? All right, Matt. Thanks so much.
All right, appreciate you, man. You have a good weekend.
You too. All right, team. 100 minutes. Lunatics, all of us. Go ahead and download this show and listen to it again. Listen to the ads. That sort of thing helps me. If anybody wants to subscribe, go ahead and do that. We'll be doing a show again on Tuesday night, just me and Josh. I think we still have a few player reviews left, and we'll probably talk about some of this stuff too. We recently eclipsed 1,000 subscribers, which is fantastic. We very much appreciate that. If you're listening on the podcast, be sure to listen to those ads there, because that helps Josh and I. The little bit of monetization that we do get from this is all because you guys are the best. Thanks so much. Head over to MavsMoneyball.com. If you haven't, we published 3 or 4 things today. We're still running strong on content. I'm really pleased with our team. Thank you so much for supporting our work. Go Mavs, and we will talk to everyone soon.